This is Pace Per Mile. For more on the latest news, reviews, check out pacepermile.com. Like us on Facebook and join in the conversation on Twitter. With host Chris Nicholas, this is Pace Per Mile.
Welcome to Pace Per Mile. I'm Chris Nicholas. On this segment, we're joined by somebody that not only ran an endurance race that some of us only fathom thinking about, but also she took the top spot. It's Meghan Hicks, and you might have heard a little bit about her in the news. Well, we're going to talk to her in the next 15 to 20 minutes about what she's completed, how she did it, how she trained for it, and maybe, just maybe, inspire others to want to do it next year. Meghan, welcome to Pace Per Mile.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you having me.
Am I putting the bar too high for expectations after this interview? Are people going to be emailing you saying, I want to run it now? Or do you want people to be thinking about that?
I think chances are good they'll either want to do it or they'll think, oh no, never.
Let's talk about it. Marathon des Sables. How many miles, first of all, so we can get that right out of the way?
Yeah, the Marathon des Sables is a 250-kilometer race. Generally speaking, that's 155-ish miles. It takes place over a week. It's a 7-day stage race.
So you're running a certain number of kilometers, miles every day. You check into camp. You're sleeping there. Take us through every single day, and then we'll start getting into how you prepared for this. Let's kind of build the foundation, because the history of this race, it goes back to, the 1980s, I believe, right?
Yeah, correct. So this race was sort of the little grandbaby of a French man by the name of Patrick Bauer. And in the 80s, he just gave up the sort of the commercial cosmopolitan France life and left and started doing some exploring in West Africa. And as part of that, he did a long walk in a part of the Sahara Desert and loved it. He thought other people should experience something on the same level he did. So he created this race called the Marathon des Sables. The first race happened in 1986. And it was something like 24 people went out to do it. And today it's a 1,000-person race.
Isn't that incredible? And I think originally they called it the Marathon in the Sand. And it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the pictures from not only you racing in it, but over the years, I mean, you are running in the desert.
You are. You're running on sand. You're running on these super sharp rocks that have been just so degraded by the extreme conditions out there that they're really sharp. You're running on like dried up lake beds that are filled with salt that kind of break and the crust chewed up under your feet. You're running on everything that you can imagine in a desert.
So at this point, we either have listeners that are completely excited about this or just not for me, right?
Yeah, let me just add in one more thing, that it's the Sahara, so it's also hot. Usually over 100 degrees every day. So if you're with me, let's keep going.
So in April, this was early April, right?
Yeah. Technically in the Sahara, a little bit more mild than the heat of the summer.
And 7 days, how many miles did you average per day?
Each of the days are a little bit different. There's usually 4 stages that are somewhere between 20 and 26 miles marathon distance. There's usually a half marathon-ish distance, and then there's a ultramarathon that's usually close to 50 miles.
And you already know the distance before you even get to the starting line. Everything is planned out with this race, right? There's no real surprises.
That's correct. Actually, the race director does a really good job of keeping the route a secret until just before the race starts. So usually about 2 days before the race starts, you begin to get information on what each day's distance and terrain will be like. But you get to study that a couple days before the race begins.
And for our ultra audience, what is the one thing that they would have never thought about taking with them in a race like this?
The one thing that you would have never thought about taking with you, that's a tough question to answer. You think you're going to like a certain food, like you eat all the time in ultramarathons here at home. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's a decent chance it's not going to even feel close to edible when it's 110 degrees.
That Cliff Bar is melting, right?
Yeah, my first year doing this race in 2009, I trained a lot with Cliff Bars, loved them, still love them. but I could not eat them in the Sahara Desert.
Okay, what about
Yep.
water? Obviously, we talk about, like, our good friend Ray Zahab. He's always, trying to raise funds and awareness for water in the Sahara for the communities. Do you have your own crew out there? Are they providing water stations, hydration? How does that work?
The French Race Administration ships in all of the water. It comes from different commercial outlets there in Morocco. So you get a strict water ration every day. You get water when you wake up. You get water when you finish each stage of racing. And then there are water checkpoints every, 6 to 10 miles. So you get a ration along the way. It's all bottled water. So we're not taking away from the water of the few inhabitants out there.
When we talk about the exposure that this race receives throughout the world, more than 45 nationalities take part in the race. You said over 1,000 participants. I think, 200 to 400 media representatives are there to cover the race as well. Did you see that it was kind of like glitz and glam?
For listeners who've experienced ultramarathons in the U.S. or in North America, many of our ultramarathons feel like a little bit like family reunions. They're potlucks and they're very low key, and maybe there's not even a start or a finish line banner. This is a European style ultramarathon, and I mean, they go big. Yeah. Music, glitz, glamour, like supreme organization. I mean, you have to be ultra organized when you're going to do a race for 1,000 people in the middle of the Sahara.
Okay, let's go back a little bit to the training side first, and then we'll move into day by day of the race, kind of bring some of your memories back through the finish. Training for this, and obviously you mentioned a few minutes ago about ultramarathon training. You're out there, you're doing the trails, doing some roads, but majority trails. And I think, you and I have talked a little bit off the air. You consider yourself more of a trail runner than a road runner. So you were used to something like this. Tell us about your training. How long ago did you say, I'm going to do this, and then what did it take to get to race day?
I'd say I had racing the 2013 Marathon des Sables on my mind since I finished the 2012 Marathon des Sables. I finished it last year and was really inspired, and I feel like I was clued in on the last details on sort of what it would take to turn up even fitter and even better. I think I did about 6 months of specific training, and I mean, this is a race that's so unique. You are running across desert terrain, cross country, over mountains, across sand dunes, across these salt flats. You're running through heat, and you're carrying a backpack containing all of the food and camping equipment that you need for a week out there. So training for this race is different than training for any other race, I think. And for me, smart training is specific training, doing runs that mimic what racing the Marathon des Sables is like. So running back to back to back to sometimes back long runs, carrying a weighted backpack, going to find desert terrain to run on here at home.
And you're acclimating to those race conditions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, if I read right, they provide your sleeping necessities, right? The tent, those kind of items. So you're not really carrying that much during the race when it comes to that area, or not?
They give each competitor a shade tent to hang out under with 7 other competitors. So after each stage of running is done, you go to your assigned tent, and it's an open-sided tent. It just essentially provides shade from the sun, which is amazing. And
I bet by the end of the week, you don't want to necessarily bunk too much with those other 6 people, right?
You become very close friends. They're small tents and a lot of people in them, and you're under, situations of duress. You actually grow very close with those people emotionally, though you probably don't want to get too close to them physically. You're a little dirty and stinky at the end of a week.
Now, we're chatting with you today, Meghan Hicks, right here on Pace Per Mile, talking a little bit about Marathon des Sables, and obviously we talked a little bit about the history and going into the training now, but we also want to tell the listeners that there is something that does pay off after all of this, and that is taking the top spot. And we want to congratulate you first on winning Marathon des Sables. Last year, you ran the race What was your spot and what was your time, and how much did that change to this year?
Last year I was the fifth woman.
Can I ask, and I don't want to put any sort of dim light on that, but was it that trained harder? You said, okay, these are the things that I need to do differently. Did some of the participants that participated last year, did they not show up, or did you gave it all this year? What was the key to your success?
I'd say I'd probably focus on just sort of what I did in terms of answering that question. I definitely trained more miles, and I trained like more specifically. So I think I also trained smarter for this particular race, just up the volume and up to the applicable workouts, if you will.
Give us some examples. What did you do differently last year versus this year?
This year I did more back-to-back-to-back long runs. This is a race where you're running, 20 miles one day, 22 miles the next day, 24 miles the next day, 50 miles the day after that, a marathon after that, and a half marathon after that. So you just plain need to acclimate your body to running a long way every day. And there's really no way around doing that than to train by running long day after day. So last year I did a lot of, say, 2-day back-to-back runs. This year I did a lot of those, and I did 3 back-to-back days. I even did a 4-day back-to-back long run training spurt.
And what percentage of miles, we had talked about it being 250 kilometers, what percentage of kilometers did you feel that you maxed out at before starting to take your rest days and such? Did you get to 90% of that, 80% of that? You'd mentioned four days back to back to back. Did you feel like you got almost to that threshold of, okay, I can take this on?
I think at least be training 150 miles a week isn't doable. I don't have that. I don't have a base to do that without creating the possibility of injury and other risks that would come out of that. So I had some weeks that were, I don't know what I'd say, 75% of what the race actually is mileage-wise.
Now, going back for a few moments, you talked about, and we had chatted about the glitz and glam, and this definitely being a different atmosphere than the ultra races here in the States. What about recognizable faces? When you were running or getting ready for the race, did you see people that were like, wow, I had no idea that person was going to be here?
No celebrities this year. There have been a couple celebrities over the year. For instance, a British Olympic rower, James Cracknell, ran the race one year. And he actually did really well. I think he finished in the top 15 men. Notable figures this year, both the returning men's and women's champions from last year. They were back to defend their titles. Pretty well-known names when it comes to this sport, folks who've been coming and doing well there year after year. Also, Mohammed Ahansal, he was the winner this year, and he and his brother have a combined 15 wins in this race's 28-year history. So they're what you would call legendary when it comes to this race. They're Moroccans who are from the Sahara Desert. They've lived and trained there their whole life. I don't think there are people who are better adapted to this race than them.
You bring up a pretty good topic, too, and that's impressive to have 15 wins from that same race. 2 questions for you. The first question is relevant to your next step when it comes to Marathon des Sables. Are you going to be back next year?
Well, I'll definitely race the Marathon des Sables again. I'm not confirmed for next year yet. It's a big and unique commitment when it comes to logistics and life as well as training. So we'll see.
All right. Makes sense. We'll give you a little bit of time. We'll ask the same question next week. This has come up in conversation, and I'd like to get your viewpoint on this, is that you'd mentioned a few moments ago about acclimating to the conditions, to the race. With Kenyans and, like you said, Moroccans, do you feel that because they're training in that environment daily, weekly, throughout their entire life, that they tend to, or they can be a better performer because of that environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Sahara is unique. The footing can be quite a challenge. Running all day on sand dunes. If you haven't trained on sand dunes or you've never run on sand dunes, there's no way you'll be able to run as fast as somebody who's run, thousands of training miles on sand dunes. And the other factor in the Sahara is the heat. There's a short-term acclimation process that, you can gain by sitting in saunas and training in heat. But I don't know, when you live your whole life in that temperature, it's hard to acclimate any better than just your natural world.
And prior to the race, did you get a chance to train in anything that was remotely close to that heat?
I did some time in a sauna where I would sit or do a core workout, or if nobody was in there, I would bring my running shoes in and jog.
That's the way to do it. And you probably have somebody that you reached out to that kind of gave you advice on this particular race, or just running something on this endurance level.
Yeah, sure. I went to my first Marathon des Sables in 2009, and I feel very fortunate that some of the local Moroccan runners have taken me under their wing over the years and given me all kinds of training tips, and they've even let me come and stay with them to train in the Sahara Desert with them. I feel very lucky to have been taken under their wings. You
were just featured in Runner's World magazine. How did that feel to get a call from Runner's World?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I'm a sports writer, so I'm usually the person who's interviewing others. So it feels very unnatural to be in the opposite position, and of course I'm desperately flattered that people are that interested in the race and my story.
This isn't the only race that you run. What's some of the other events that you take part in, and some of the other accomplishments that you've achieved?
Oh gosh, I would say I probably do an ultramarathon every 2 months. I don't always go to them to compete, to win. I often think of some ultra races as, training races for a goal race that's down the road, or just spending time on trails with friends or meeting new people. I really love, like when I go to compete, I really love stage races. I like these multi-day events that you become immersed in a new piece of geography, and you have a week to get to know your fellow competitors, and you really, it's like traveling, but instead of doing it by car or train or bus, you're doing it by foot.
We start talking more about these stage races. Do you think that popularity of these events will diminish that sort of as well? The more runners that start taking part in these events, and the more commercializing? I mean, we could talk for hours on that side of it, but do you think that will hurt those particular races?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, and I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think there's definitely a fast evolution happening in trail and ultra running right now, where so many new competitors are joining the sport, new events, hundreds of new ultras every year. And we're going up the steep side of the expansion curve right now. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know until we level out and we sort of have time to have some breathing room and look around.
As a race director for an ultra here in Michigan myself, we tend to cap it at a certain number, and it's important to stay in that number for that environment and for that feeling, instead of having thousands of runners, taking part. So I wonder if that's a topic of conversation that we want to bring up in the future and see if things change. And I'd love to have your opinion on that.
Yeah, I definitely see race directors, going one direction or another, trying to say, well, I want to keep my down-home friendly family reunion style ultra, and others saying, like, this is one where I want to draw like the big competition, and we really want to, amplify the competition side of things. So yeah, I guess my hope is that there'll be room on the spectrum for everybody.
When you show up at your next ultra marathon, what are people going to say? How are they going to treat you? What do you think?
I don't know. I hope they just hug me and high five me like they always have, and do.
That's awesome. For our listeners, Meghan Hicks, 24 hours, 42 minutes, and 1 second, finished in the first spot in the Marathon des Sables. Early April. You're not sure if you're going to do it again. I'm sure people will be bugging you all year long to defend your title. But also for our fans, they can not only obviously listen to this segment and read about you on your Facebook, but they can also read how you contribute to the sport. 3 major areas, right? You are a contributor and a senior editor, obviously, for iRunFar.com. You write for Trail Runner magazine. What else do you do with Marathon and Beyond?
I write a column in each issue called On the Trail, and I like to talk about goings-ons of the life of trail running, what trail runners are doing, some of the things I'm experiencing on the trail, news and views of the sport.
You have a website, too. Where's that at?
Yeah, my personal website is just my name, MeghanMHicks.com.
We talked a little bit about, obviously, the race and hopefully maybe inspiring somebody to look into it, go to their website. And that website, what's the marathondesab.com?
Actually, they've just sort of fortified their website in the last year. They're marathondesab.com.
So people can go to their website, check it out. I'm sure that they could reach out to you via email, Facebook message, all of that good stuff if they have additional questions.
I'd be delighted to invite more people to the crazy race.
And what's your next race on tap? Do you have anything planned?
I don't have anything on the race calendar yet. I'm working on my race schedule for the next year presently. I will definitely tell you that I put all my eggs in one basket with the Marathon des Sables.
Are you running any miles yet?
I'm taking a nice 3 weeks of recovery. This week I'm probably running about 50 miles a week, but all slow miles on trails, just taking in the scenery and just seeing how my body feels.
And those that have participated in the race as well, do you see that the same sort of reaction for them too?
Yeah, you see it all actually. There were about, I'd say, 10 to 12 crazy people who finished the Marathon des Sables, and 1 week later they ran the London Marathon, which I think is just off the wall. I hope they're, I don't know, drinking beer or their beverage of choice and putting their legs up after that.
Yeah. Last question. Obviously we're still dealing with the news of the Boston Marathon bombing. Your opinions, viewpoint, anything you want to share with the audience when it comes to that?
Well, I heard about the Boston bombings quite a few hours after they actually happened because I was in Morocco and kind of offline there. There's not internet access there as easily as it is here in America. So it had been this energetic, sort of heartfelt night out celebrating in Marrakesh, Morocco with other friends who had run the race. And it was a very jubilant atmosphere. And we came back to the hotel and we all got out our smartphones to see what was going on in the world. And we all just kind of looked at each other shocked that after spending a week, open-hearted among a community of runners, that there was this tragedy going on with our people at home. It was absolutely heartbreaking and continues to be. But I'll always say that runners are really not the right group of people to mess with if you're looking to find and point out weakness.
Oh, I agree with you on that. We get stronger. We
Absolutely.
Only get stronger. It's something that won't fade away, and when Boston comes around next year, I think we'll see a totally different atmosphere, a stronger atmosphere. And it had affected people around the world, didn't it?
Yeah. For instance, look through Facebook and see people messaging each other, who'd been at the marathon, checking in and trying to make sure everybody was all right. It was heart-wrenching to look at.
I agree. Meghan Hicks, you have a wealth of knowledge that we would love to tap into over the course of time here on Pace Per Mile. If we ever wanted to dive into trail running, you would be one of those individuals that would definitely be able to give us a lot of information. But more importantly for the listeners, please reach out to Meghan. Make sure you read her latest column. What's the latest columns all about?
Trail Runner magazine just came out. I got to go run a race on a tiny island in the Indian Ocean, and so I have a little article and next to a big beautiful picture with some by some photographers I worked with there about a exotic running destination.
We'll pick it up, we'll read it, and we'd love to have you back on. But for now, we're going to let you go and congratulate you once again for your first place win, female, overall in the Marathon des Sables. Just a couple of weeks ago, early April, and 24:42:01. After coming back in the 5th spot last year, you took the crown. Congratulations again, Meghan.
Aw, thank you so much.
At Pace Per Mile, we want to share your story. Do you know someone that has a compelling topic to share with the listeners? Help us tell your story or their story by emailing us today. info@pacepermile.com. That's info@pacepermile.com.